You're listening to a special cryptid edition of the Blue Ridge True Crime Podcast, bringing you compelling true crime stories from the Appalachian Mountains and beyond. I'm your host, Alfred Dockery. Grab your hat and a lantern, and let's get on the trail. Flatwoods, a monster, a myth, and the men who made it a legend. Tonight we're traveling back in time to September 12, 1952. The place? A sleepy small town in the hills of central West Virginia called Flatwoods, about 70 miles northeast of Charleston. The town is about to become the center of one of the most bizarre and enduring UFO stories in American history. A story that starts with a flash in the sky and ends with two of the most fascinating characters in the world of the weird. This is the story of the Flatwoods Monster, also known as the Green Monster, the Braxton County Monster, Braxy, or the Phantom of Flatwoods. Night of the Monster. It all started around sundown on a Friday night. Two brothers, Fred and Edward May, and a group of friends, Tommy Heyer, Neil Nunley, and Ronnie Shaver, were playing football on a school playground when one of the boys saw a bright object cross the sky and appear to land or crash on a nearby hill. The boys ranged in age from 10 to 14 years. The brothers went home and told their mother, Kathleen May. She, her cousin, 17-year-old Eugene Gene Lemon, who was in the National Guard, and the family dog joined the expedition. Armed with a flashlight that was probably dimmer than the one on your phone, they headed out to investigate. The intrepid band of seven reached the top of the hill, where they saw a pulsating red light. They noticed a mist that had what was later described as a sickening metallic or sulfurous odor. Lemon saw a pair of shining eyes, which he thought might be a possum or raccoon, and aimed the flashlight in their direction. Here's a description of what they saw from Gray Barker's article, The Monster and the Saucer, in Fate magazine. Towering above them was a man-like shape. Its face was round and blood red. Around the eyes was a pointed hood-like shape, dark in appearance. In the face were two eye-like openings from which greenish-orange beams projected over their heads. The body, illuminated by the flashlight, from the head downward to the waist, appeared dark and colorless to Nunley, although some others said it was green. Mrs. May said she saw cloth-like folds around the figure. Descriptions from the waist down are vague. Most of the seven said this part of the figure was not under view. The creature emitted a hissing sound and glided toward them. Lemon screamed and dropped the flashlight, and the group bolted down the hill. Each of them leaped over a 3-foot-tall fence they had opened and closed on the way up. Later that night, A. Lee Stewart, co-publisher of the Braxton County Democrat, organized an armed posse and went to the scene. Stewart said he did not know what to think. "I hate to say I believe it, but I hate to say I don't believe it," Stewart said. "Those people were scared, badly scared, and I sure smelled something." The next day, Stewart discovered two parallel skid marks in the tall meadow grass between the spot where the monster was seen and the area where the red pulsating light was sighted. He also saw traces of oil or an odd gummy deposit. There were no signs of a meteorite, alien creature, or spaceship. On Monday, September 15, a press report by the United Press wire service made the incident a national news story. The article quoted Mrs. May as saying that the creature looked worse than Frankenstein. It couldn't have been human. According to the article, the overpowering metallic odor made them sick, and some of them vomited for several hours. State police and a number of locals decided the story was a case of mass hysteria. This was during the height of America's flying saucer craze, and Cold War anxiety was at a fever pitch. Pop culture was buzzing with flying saucer and alien invasion movies. Movies from 1951 and 1952 included The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Man from Planet X, The Thing from Another World, Radar Men from the Moon, and Zombies of the Stratosphere. Fun fact, Zombies was a black and white Republican Studios serial, and Leonard Nimoy of Star Trek fame had a minor role in it. Theories and explanations. Here are two explanations of the Flatwoods encounter. The first is from author, explorer, zoologist, and television personality Ivan T. Sanderson. He, like Barker, whose description of the creature I read earlier, was on the ground in Flatwoods the week after the incident. The second is from Joe Nickell, an American skeptic and paranormal investigator who traveled to Flatwoods in June of 2000. Think of it as dueling paranormal investigators. I'll get someone working on a song. Hopefully we can get a dobro and a mandolin in the mix. Here's Sanderson's take from his 1969 book, Uninvited Visitors, A Biologist Looks at UFOs. In view of the initial reports and our first-hand investigations, and more especially as a result of plotting the incidents on a map, we are of the opinion that a flight of intelligently controlled objects flew over West Virginia on the evening of September 12, 1952, and further that one of them landed or crashed, a second and third crashed, and a fourth blew up in the air. If this object at Flatwoods was at different temperature than the surface of our Earth when it landed, after heating up by friction while passing through our atmosphere, it might have warmed up too rapidly and thus started to glow. As it began to melt, it gave rise to the gaseous form of whatever it may have been constructed from, as dry ice does. This caused the mist and the stench. It rapidly dissolved altogether, which explains its disappearance before the first posse arrived at the hill crest. Its intelligent entity could not cope with their environment except in a diving suit, which was itself disintegrating. Here's Nichols' view from a story he wrote for the November-December 2000 issue of the Skeptical Inquirer. I agree with most previous investigators that the monster sighting was not a hoax. The fact that the witnesses did see a meteor and assembled on the spur of the moment to investigate makes that unlikely. So does the fact that everyone who talked to them afterwards insisted that the eyewitnesses were genuinely frightened. There is no doubt that a meteor of considerable proportion flashed across the heavens that Friday night, since it was visible from at least 3 states, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. To explain the creature, Nicholl quoted UFOologist Major Donald Keyhole, U.S. Marine Corps, retired, from his book Flying Saucers from Outer Space. In January 1953, I was told what intelligence believed to be the basic facts. First, the glowing object seen by Mrs. May and the boys actually was a meteor. It merely appeared to be landing when it disappeared over the hill. Second, the group did see 2 glowing eyes, probably those of a large owl perched on a limb. Underbrush below may have given the impression of a giant figure, and in their excitement, they imagined the rest. Third, the boys' illness was a physical effect brought on by their fright. Fourth, the flattened grass and supposed tracks were caused by the first villagers when they came to investigate. Specifically, Nicholl suggested that the creature's description and behavior best fit a barn owl, most likely a female. The Mythmakers, Barker and Sanderson. The week after the encounter saw an influx of reporters following up on the story and bringing together 2 men who would have an extraordinary impact on paranormal stories for decades to come. Gray Barker and Ivan Sanderson. Barker would go on to have a tremendous impact on UFO publishing, starting his own flying saucer newsletter, The Sartorian, before year's end, and Sanderson had already coined the term cryptozoology. Barker was a 27-year-old Braxton County native, working as a theater booker, hawking movies to drive-in theaters out of Clarksburg, West Virginia, when he heard about the Flatwoods incident. He had been the editor of his college paper, so he sent a telegram to Fate, a U.S. magazine about paranormal phenomena, asking if they wanted him to cover the story. Fate's reply was rapid and to the point. The telegram read, "Story probably hoax, but investigate rigorously. Don't speculate, simply state facts. 3 or 4 pics, up to 3,000 words. Monday deadline." The next weekend found him back in Braxton County, chasing down leads and seeking interviews with the witnesses. While in town, he ran into Sanderson, who was also covering the story. Both needed to get their articles researched, written, and out ASAP, and I do mean ASAP. Unfortunately for them, Kathleen May and Gene Lemon had left town on a Greyhound bus headed for New York to be interviewed on the NBC TV program We the People. Each man would overcome this hurdle in his own way. Here's a portion of Sanderson's article from the Tuesday, September 23 Baltimore Sun. The headline read, "Scientist quizzes observers of West Virginia saucer." The 12-foot glowing green monster that had been widely reported as having been seen alongside a glowing cone that landed on a mountain pasture near the tiny village of Flatwoods in this county was not a man or a monster, but some sort of machine like a diving bell. If the 2 frightened adults and 5 intelligent young boys who say that they saw it are not all the most experienced liars who ever lived. We have questioned these youngsters separately and together, with and without their elders, for 2 days, and we can report definitively that they are not lying. 2 things stand out from Sanderson's report. There are no quotes. He interviewed people he believed stood within yards, if not feet, of an alien and a spaceship. He does not quote them once. Also, he doesn't share their observations with his readers. He gives his readers his interpretation of their observations. If there were a Norse god of mansplaining, his name would be Sanderson, the man who invented the Men in Black. This may be the first time you've heard of Gray Barker, but you're familiar with his work. In his 1956 book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, he introduced the world to the Men in Black, a group of mysterious figures who were said to intimidate individuals into keeping silent about UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters. According to Barker, the Men in Black traveled in groups of 3, wore black suits, and drove large black automobiles, usually Cadillacs. As a businessman, Barker seemed to have taken 2 old sayings to heart. The best way to get rich during a gold rush is to sell shovels, or UFO newsletters and books, and never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Barker did not just fudge facts and exaggerate details. He was known to participate in the occasional hoax. Perhaps the most famous of these was the Lost Creek saucer hoax. In July of 1966, Barker and UFO author James Moseley produced fake footage of a UFO. They had John Sheets, one of Barker's researchers, suspend a fake ceramic flying saucer from a fishing pole in front of a car while Moseley drove and Barker filmed. Moseley played the film during his UFO lectures, and Barker sold copies of the footage through his mail order business. Both men claimed that Sheets had innocently recorded a flying saucer landing. Interestingly, Barker has his own historic sign on East Main Street in Buckhannon, West Virginia. A collection of his papers is housed at the Clarksburg-Harrison Public Library. A credulous scientist. Sanderson was a British biologist and writer born in Edinburgh, Scotland, who became a naturalized U.S. citizen. He attended Eton College and graduated with honors from Cambridge University with a degree in zoology. During the 50s and 60s, Sanderson was widely published in magazines such as True, Sports Afield, and Argosy. He was a frequent guest on the Gary Moore Show, often bringing live animals with him. He was sort of the Steve Irwin of his day. He was also known for his writings about cryptozoology, with special attention to the search for lake monsters, sea serpents, a dinosaur believed to be alive in the Congo, giant penguins, the Yeti, and the Sasquatch. Sanderson's 1961 book, Abominable Snowmen, Legend Come to Life, argued that there were 4 living types of abominable snowmen scattered over 5 continents. The book was criticized by the journal Science as unscientific. I mean, that sounds fair. The reviewer noted how Sanderson relied heavily and uncritically upon anecdotal reports and dubious footprints. Speaking of footprints, he was also taken in by the giant penguin hoax. For 10 years, starting in 1948, giant 3-toed footprints were found at Clearwater Beach in Florida. Sanderson declared the footprints impossible to fake and stated they were made by a 15-foot tall penguin. No word on what it was doing in Florida. Disney World wouldn't open until 1971. Cypress Gardens began its water skiing shows in 1943, so I suppose that might have been it. In 1988, prankster Tony Signorini admitted that he and a friend had made the footprints using a pair of cast iron feet attached to high-top sneakers. In 1968, Sanderson introduced the concept of the vile vortex, referring to specific, evenly distributed points across the Earth where strange phenomena such as mysterious disappearances, UFO sightings, and poltergeist activity were reported at an unusually high rate. The first two vortices he identified were the infamous Bermuda Triangle and its Pacific counterpart, the Devil's Sea. The Flatwoods Legacy. Occurring at the height of both the popularity of flying saucers and Cold War paranoia, the Flatwoods Monster has been described as one of the most peculiar and perplexing encounters of the 20th century. The incident played a foundational role in the development of several modern UFO conspiracy theories. The tiny West Virginia town of Flatwoods has embraced the legend. The mysterious cryptid continues to draw visitors to rural Braxton County to this day. The Flatwoods Monster is one of only 2 West Virginia cryptids to have its own museum and festival. The other, of course, is the Mothman. If you find yourself at next September's Flatwoods Monster Convention or visit the Flatwoods Monster Museum on Main Street in downtown Sutton, could you pick me up a Braxy bobblehead? I'd be much obliged. If you'd like more cryptid or paranormal episodes to go along with our compelling Appalachian true crime stories, please leave a comment or shoot me an email. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more people find the podcast. That's it for this episode of the Blue Ridge True Crime Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It helps more people find the show. Don't forget to check the show notes for sources, the Blue Ridge True Crime Substack and YouTube channel, and any story-related links. Until next time, I'll look for you on the back roads.